Okay, I think it's probably a good time to get started. Cliff, are you okay?
Yeah, let's rock and roll.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, everyone, good evening. I'm Tim Muzzio, co-chair of the PATC Hikes Committee. And on behalf of the Hikes Committee, I want to welcome you to tonight's presentation on a topic that affects anyone who steps outside: ticks, insect bites, and snake bites. We were to do this a couple of weeks ago, but unfortunately, due to power loss, we were unable to do it. I'm glad we were able to get Cliff back again to do the presentation this week. To guide us on this, we are joined by the director and co-founder of the Center for Wilderness Safety. For over 20 years, this organization set a high standard for remote medical training. Their expertise is trusted by the U.S. military, federal agencies, state troopers, and outdoor organizations nationwide. Our speaker, Cliff, leads a team of remote medical specialists, search and rescue veterans, and tactical medical instructors. They specialize in preparing outdoor enthusiasts to handle the unexpected with confidence. I am very pleased to introduce the director and co-founder of the Centerness for Wilderness Safety, Clif Castleman. Take it away, Cliff.
Thank thank you so much. It sounds so much better and so much professional, more professional when you say it that way. I just think I have a group of misfits who like to teach people things. So I do want to make one slight change slash clarification, by the way. Due to time and everything else, tonight will just be about tick safety and Lyme disease, and all things tick, not snakes. Unfortunately, that's a whole other thing, which I believe is actually happening in 2 weeks. Wink, wink. Since this is a continued program that's going to happen every few weeks through PATC. So that'll be
Okay.
included in that one, as well as the heat illnesses and all that sort of other stuff. So, but that's then. This is now. So, all right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Cliff. Like you said, I'm the director and co-founder of Center for Wilderness Safety. We are celebrating our 21st year, which is crazy because it started out as a class project at Penn State University. They're like, make an organization that earns money. We're like, cool, beer money, fantastic. And then we did like outdoor activities. We did outdoor rock climbing and all sorts of stuff. And then my girlfriend at the time was like, hey, do you want to become a Red Cross instructor? And I was like, okay. And then it went sideways from there. And now this is what we do. We're one of the top organizations in the country that teaches wilderness medicine. And this, what you're seeing in front of you here, hopefully you all can see that screen that says ticksafety.com, is something which actually kind of resulted from our wilderness first aid courses, which we teach a lot of all the time. And when we get into the section of ticks in that course, there's always a ton of questions. And so we thought, wouldn't we be nice to have like a little resource for folks? And so we put a little web page on our main wildsafe.org website. We said, all right, this is our tick safety section, whatever. And it crashed the website. And so we said, well, I think we're onto something. And since I had graduated from Penn State, I went back and got an online program. And they have a program for acarology, which is the study of ticks and mites, because apparently I have that kind of time. And so I figured, why not become an expert in something that scares the heck out of me? So without further ado, let's get started. All right. So this evening, we are going to talk about a number of things, including some of the basics. So tick identification, removal, and prevention. Those are very, very important, obviously. Talk a little bit about ecology, and believe it or not, why you should care. People don't seem to think that matters. Oh, it totally matters. Trust me. Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses. And yes, one of the top things we're going to talk about, of course, is the red meat allergy. Don't you worry. I know people are already going, oh my gosh. So, yep, it's a thing. So, and more importantly, believe it or not, there are tons of myths about ticks and how to remove them and yada, yada, yada. So, but before we get into that juicy stuff, I'm going to give you guys a quiz. By the way, I'm a dad, so I have dad jokes, and I used to teach fifth grade, so I have bad jokes. So you have to suffer through them, and that's the way it is. All right. So first, you guys can answer in the chat. Would love to hear what you guys think. Let's start with question numero uno. True or false? Ticks can fly. Put your answers in the chat. Let's see what you think. Oh, season. Oh, a bunch of. Oh, wow. You guys are all smart people. Jeez. And dad jokes, yes. Not that I've seen. Yeah, same here. So that is false. People think they can. They can't. They might fall off of things, but they can't fly. That'd be terrifying. All right. Good job for most of you. Question number 2. True or false? Ticks are active in winter. I'm talking like 3 inches of snow on the ground. Are you going to find a tick? Ooh, we got some yeses and some nos. I like this. This is good. A lot of inside. Hopefully not inside, but you never know. Not likely. So here's the thing. I like what the one person said, not likely. And I think that's a somewhat accurate answer. Most ticks don't die from the cold, which kind of really sucks. But they're not really tremendously active, but they can still survive, which, yeah, it's a bummer. I know. All right, question number 3. Ticks can jump off of trees to get you. This is a highly contested one. I fight this a lot. False, true. Oh, we got both. Oh, we got a good number of true and false. That's awesome. You guys are, I love this. I love this. All right, so the answer here is no. They do not have the ability to spring themselves off of anything. In fact, they just kind of walk in meander places, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. All right, true or false? Using bug spray with DEET is, in fact, very effective. Regardless of what your stance is on DEET, whether it's good or bad for the environment or anything else. So the general consensus here, believe it or not, is yes. Higher levels of DEET are definitely more effective than lower, but the simple answer is yes, it is effective. We'll talk more about preventatives and repellents and such here in a minute. Deer ticks can be found in open, grassy fields. True. Yes. All the trues. All very true. Yes. True. 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 Wow. Okay. All right. I think you guys are wrong. Oh, you didn't see that one coming, did you? Deer ticks cannot. I'm so sorry. They are actually very, very susceptible to dehydration, believe it or not. But again, common misconception. And you know what? One more, just for giggles. All ticks carry diseases. No, yes, no, maybe, no, mostly no. Question mark. That's always a good one. The simple answer is maybe. I don't know. Because here's the thing. I mean, I'm sure that none of them, like not all of them do, right? But at the same time, we haven't figured out a way to talk to them. We can't be like, hey, do you carry disease? And they're like, no, but Bob does. Oh, which one's Bob? We don't have that technology. It doesn't work. And they don't talk like that anyway. So the simple answer is we need to treat them like they do because, and here comes the fun stuff, they have diseases. And yes, we're all very aware of this. But the thing is, depending on the species of the tick, that it tells us, A, what you're up against, so to speak, and also tells us the behavior of the tick will kind of help figure out like what we're kind of, I don't know, not up against, but likely to encounter. Let's put it that way. So, for example, Lyme disease, because it's from a very slow feeding, very slow moving tick, better known as the deer tick, which I'm sure you all have known and heard about and everything else, tends to take a longer amount of time than, say, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is much, much, much shorter. So Lyme disease, I think current speculation is quote unquote 36 to 48 hours. There was a study done in France recently that said nymphs might as early as 16 hours, but it wasn't confirmed or peer reviewed. So that's France, so who knows? Rocky Mountain spotted fever, is I believe 6 to 10 hours. Alpha-gal, which is the red meat allergy that everyone hates as well, also 6 to 10 hours. Powassan virus, 15 minutes. What? Tularemia, 54 hours of feeding. So depending on what species of tick you have, there's a good chance that depending on how long it is on and how long it's feeding, you may or may not have. So the average amount, quote unquote, is 24 to 36 hours as per CDC, which comes down to, okay, what tick is on me? What do I need to worry about? So this is where tick identification comes in really, really handy. We actually have a Facebook group called Tick and Mite Identification and Discussion. You guys can join for free. It's a great group. I think we have like 12,000 members right now, I believe. We started it in 2020 and we had 300 and some odd members. And that's all we do. We just identify ticks like every day, all the time. So the top left, in case you're unaware, is one of the more common ones that we have here. They are the American dog tick. The female's on the left, the male's on the right, just in case you're aware. On the right-hand side is one that you're probably not going to come in contact with as a human. However, if you have a pet that goes woof woof, you very well might. That is the brown dog tick, which is almost exclusively found on dogs, believe it or not. Like kennels, for example, are really well known for having breakouts of those, which is not fun. The bottom left is well, obviously the girl gives it the name, right? Lone Star, which is also found in Texas, amongst other places too. They are very small and fast moving, and they're a little bit different. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. And then, of course, the one that we love to hate, the black-legged, aka the deer tick, as it were. And the problem with those, of course, is that they are much smaller and they carry a host of issues, which kind of sucks. So, all right, let's talk first about the American dog tick because, well, they're everywhere, as you can see. There is a white stretch. By the way, these maps are updated as of 2025, and they're fairly accurate based on data from various health organizations as well as health departments and civilians, or what do you call civilian scientists, I guess they're called. And they're confirmed, which is nice. So the thing is, they're everywhere. The one stretch that they don't have it is, of all places, this place called the Rocky Mountains, which cracks me up because there's this thing called the Rocky Mountain spotted fever that they tend to carry. It's actually quite rare that they do, but when they do, and the funny thing is, about 70 to 90% of the cases of Rocky Mountain spotted fever are in North Carolina, Tennessee, and like Southern Virginia. So someone got the mountains wrong. Just saying. Now there is a quote unquote, we'll call it like high altitude version of the dog tick, which is called the mountain wood tick, which lives in that little white stretch there, which is just, like I said, the high altitude version of the same exact tick. Looks almost identical. So, but they're large. They're very slow moving, slow feeding. I'm pretty sure that's life size right there, right? Can you imagine just watching one like crawl? Oh my God, no! They're big. They're not that big. Like here we go. Here's an example. When they feed, they get absolutely disgusting looking. And what's interesting is they, for the most part, tend to look tan or gray when they feed, unlike other species which turn different colors, which is kind of cool. That weird, like cocoon looking thing that you see right above the engorged tick on the left hand side there, that, believe it or not, is actually what's called a feeding tube. It is a bunch of enzymes that tick has secreted around where the mouthpiece was, and so basically that's kind of how they attach them or help attach themselves to their host. That way they get a good suction and can feed, without getting ripped off and everything else too. So if you ever see that, it looks like if you remove a tick and it's like, oh, it came out with like some skin. That wasn't actually skin. That was just a feeding tube. Not that it matters. Reticulated tick is something completely different. Yes, absolutely. Let's see here. What else we have? Okay, the Lone Star tick. So we are obviously in Virginia. And in 2010, if you were to tell me, hey, I saw a Lone Star, I would have been like, no, you didn't. Shut up. Yeah, they're everywhere. They are up into Canada now. They have crossed their home state of Texas, as we say. They are freaking, I think I actually had one confirmed in California last month. And the gentleman wasn't even like traveling, or like it would have made sense if the guy like flew there from like Pennsylvania or something. Nope. So I don't know. I think they're spreading out significantly, but they're different for two reasons. One, they are much hardier. They're much smaller. They're the ones who give us alpha gal, which is the allergic reaction to the sugar or carbohydrate known as alpha gal or alpha galactose. And they're the only tick that has a really weird and unique feeding habit. So most ticks, when they feed, they go out on the end of like a shrub or piece of glass or grass, pardon me, and they stick out their legs and they go, hey, somebody, they're waving their arms like, hey, come, like, like sticking out your thumb, like, anyone want to hitchhike? I'm here I'd love a ride, and if someone brushes up against it, then ta-da, they hop on and they feed and whatever. What's interesting about the Lone Star is that they are the only tick that, how do I say this without trying to sound scary? They go after the scent that they want. So they don't hunt, because that's an extreme word. In their front little legs there, they have a tiny little hole called the Haller's organ, which actually seeks out CO2. That's kind of how they figure out, hey, there's a meal coming this way. And so once their Haller's organ detects CO2, they will actively go in that direction, kind of like Toucan Sam, follow your nose, right? Like that kind of thing. And these guys are much smaller. There's a nymph right there on the right-hand side on a dime. That's one that my brother-in-law actually found on him and managed to take a quite decent picture. And only the female adults have that little white dot. I get into a lot of debates about people going, "Oh, well, isn't that it doesn't have the white dot?" I'm like, that's because it's not, an adult female. So, but just beware. And they are what I like to call nightmare fuel because they are the ones who are known for seed ticks. Now, if you've never had the pleasure of walking through, as I call a tick bomb or a tick nest, which is not the right term, but here's the thing: a single female tick of most species in the United States, of which, by the way, there's close to 800 and some odd 50 or so species to choose from, right? But these are like the top four. Regardless, if you have one single tick, she lays eggs, and it's going to be anywhere between 2 and 7,000 eggs, which, by the way, 2 to 3 of these little eggs will fit in a single granule of rice. So they're freaky deaky tiny, okay? They all, because, they come from the underworld, they all hatch around the same time. And then you walk through it, and you're covered in these tiny little moving dots. Now, the good news is, for the most part, these little guys do not have any sort of hereditary diseases that are passed on, which is pretty great. So at best, you're looking at, besides absolutely nightmare fuel, you're looking at something like maybe a bacterial infection if they're actually able to get into our tough skin because they're itty bitty. They haven't had really any meals yet or anything else. Now, if you want to see how fast this can happen, well, enjoy this. And away they go. And just like that. Good night, folks. No, I'm kidding. Uh, yeah. So the easiest way to get rid of those once you've walked through some, besides obviously napalm, would be something like the inside of like inside out tape, or I like to carry a lint roller. Huge fan of those. Um, we actually offer a tick safety kit that has a lint roller in it. People are like, why did you do that? I'm like, oh, let me show you. So they're pretty cool. So in any event, all right. I know, right? I love this. Thanks for the emoji, Patty. I appreciate that. Moving on to the one that we love to hate. That is the black-legged deer tick. There is an eastern version. There's also a western version, as you can see. They, of course, are known for Lyme disease, Powassan viruses, babesiosis, anaplasmosis, and so many more. There's so many different things, which kind of sucks. So, and yeah, there's like at least like 14 others that they might possibly carry. So awesome. But the problem with these guys is the fact that they're dual seasonal, which means they kind of these itty bitty itty ones like the little nymphs will pop up right about now in the early part of summer. And then phase two, which is where the second batch comes around, is, believe it or not, October through December. We tend to see the largest amount of nymph deer ticks being born, which is crazy. People are like, why am I finding these? I'm like, I'm out in the pumpkin patch. Why am I covered in ticks? I'm like, yeah, let me tell you about that. So, but they're tiny, right? That wonderful. That's my index finger, in case you care. And that little guy right there is a well engorged nymph tick. I was in the shower and I was like, just scratching at my scab, and the scab did not come off. And my wife looks at it and goes, "Honey, I think your scab has legs," and I lost it. So, as you can imagine, not fun. The good news is, sort of in a roundabout way, once they have fed and then they, are about to, give birth to all these lovely eggs and lay all these eggs, they turn into Mother Nature's gushers, which are the size of, well, a gusher, the size of a quarter there, which is, again, disgusting. So, oh no, Lisa, I'm so sorry you've had one, Lisa. This year especially, I feel like we say this every year. This year is worse than ever. I feel like this year actually kind of warrants it. Like it's been really bad. All right, so there's a lot of different ticks out there. This image has circulated the interwebs forever. I don't know who put it together, but they're idiots because they're not right. If you look at the picture, the first picture, go down that list. The American dog tick looks an awful lot like a deer tick, as does the black-legged tick, which is also a deer tick. Like, really? Come on. And also the, yeah, just it's wrong. So get away from that. What instead we strongly recommend, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, is to go to ticksafety.com/ID, and you can download this lovely photo as a PDF. You can download a high resolution image if you want. This is available, and you can click on these things on the website. It'll take you to a web page that tells you all about them and such. But these are the most common ones that we have, just a smattering of them. Obviously, we talked about the American dog tick, black-legged deer tick, brown tick, groundhog tick, which is sort of common-ish. The Gulf Coast tick is actually becoming more and more common. And of course, the Lone Star that we know and love. The one that's not on there, believe it or not, is actually one that's becoming more and more prevalent, which unfortunately we don't talk about that much in this program, but it's the East Asian longhorn tick, which is the one that was found from Asia, brought over in 2010, and then wreaked havoc on all sorts of animals. But all right, so we've identified the tick. By the way, the most important thing to do if you ever have a tick on you is obviously remove the tick. Okay. And there are tools out there. Obviously, as an acarologist, I am a huge fan of the needle-nosed tweezers there. That's always been our go-to. And the goal there is to grab them as close to the skin as humanly possible. If you look there, right where the blue arrow is, the light-colored area is called the scutum, which is a really fun word to say. And it's like a shield, right? And it's hard. It's kind of like their exoskeleton, and it does not get squishy. And so you can squeeze it as hard as you want, and you're not going to squeeze anything from the tick into you, aka from their gut or whatever else, thereby guaranteeing that you're going to get X, Y, Z diseases. There are other tools out there, and I'm going to make some people mad here, but there's this device, the red one there, called the Tick Key, and I know the PATC has those with their logo and everything on them, and they are absolutely fantastic at marketing, and that's where it ends. Sorry, folks, they are absolutely garbage. Not only, let me remove that. I don't know if you can see that. If you ever take a look at one, they are quite large and wide and thick. So getting a small tick like a nymph, like a itty bitty tiny nymph, like especially deer ticks, you're not going to be able to do it. It just physically does not fit. I had a guy I did a Boy Scout course a number of years ago, and he said, well, the one thing we've got going for you is it's actually more lightweight than the green thing, the tick twister that you seem to love so much. And so we weighed them in person, and the tick twister, which is the green thing, weighed 0.01 ounces less. So unfortunately, the tick key is now kind of null and void. The best thing that we recommend is actually this green thing called the tick twister. We offer them through our website, and Petco and PetSmart also sell them. Those are the only 3 licensed organizations. There's a French company that makes them. And the reason I like these is because, some people are just have a hard time with tweezers, and I understand that. These just scoop the tick up, and then it comes to an infinite point, as you can see there on the left-hand side. And so the thing is, like, I have one on my keychain, I have one on my first aid kit that I carry when I go hiking and such, and I've used it literally thousands of times, not an exaggeration. And I've never once lost the mouthpiece, which as you can see sticking out there, and that's kind of its claim to fame. Not that that's a really bad thing if you have a mouthpiece left in you. If you rip the rest of the body out, basically you're just kind of worried about a risk of infection is kind of the thing, and your body will expel it much like a splinter, I guess. But big fan of those, and they come in different styles and stuff. And you guys can, if you want to, you can go to ticksafety.com/twister, I think. Tick twister, yeah, I think it's twister. You can see them there. There's different variations and whatnot. So, but anyway, I'm not here to sell you things. I'm just here to give you resources. Do not squeeze stuff of the tick into you unless you want to guarantee whatever disease they have, you do too. That's just being silly. Don't burn the tick, because think about that from a logical standpoint. Are you going to back into fire, or are you going to try to get away from it? Dun, da, da. Yes. Not only that, but yes, I'm sure you've heard that there's a decent chance that you also might get them to regurgitate, which again just reemphasizes them trying to give you whatever it is they have. Now let's talk about petroleum jelly. So that one actually, in a roundabout weird way, actually has a kind of a valid thought behind it. It doesn't work, but it's valid in the reasoning at least. So ticks breathe primarily through these, like, there's holes, if you will, in their side, kind of like gills, I guess, right? And they also breathe through their mouth, but they breathe at most 1 to 3 times an hour, if that. They require next to no oxygen whatsoever, right? So suffocating a tick is kind of a non-thing. Like, they've done studies, okay, where they've taken 24 deer ticks, they put them underwater for 48 hours. Not a single one died. Most came out stronger. Some even had tattoos. Okay, you get my point. It's when the world burns, it's gonna be cockroaches and ticks. I swear to God. All right. So enough on that. Peppermint oil, no. We're gonna talk about things not to do here in a second. Again, like I said, prevention is key. Just tucking your pants into your socks. Simple things. Wearing light colored clothing. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, given who you guys are, but a simple thing like a little lint roller, or even just putting inside out duct tape, or even painter's tape around your ankles on top of your socks. Believe it or not, super duper effective, because ticks are on the ground, and it's very rare that a tick will actually climb more than about 3 feet up. And so they're going to climb up, even if you find them in your hair, in your neck, wherever else, right? The thing is, they start at the bottom and they work their way up, which is kind of curious. So that leads me to my next question. You can see here, these are places when you do a tick check to check, because they like places that are very warm and moist and hairy and kind of tucked away and out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. And those places tend to have softer skin, softer tissue, which makes it easier for them to feed. Where do you think, on this lovely girl here, the most common ticks are found? So when people are doing a tick check, where do you think they find upwards of 80% of ticks that are on them? Take a guess. Is it the back of the knees? Is it between their legs, around their waist, belly button, armpits, ears, scalp, waist, hair? Yep. Around, yep, your groin. Yep, bikini line. So the answer, dun dun dun, right there. It's all the way up top, which is absolutely crazy. In fact, some of the more common places that we tend to see them is, especially in kids, is right behind the ear. So my kids have had a couple of ticks over the years, and my oldest is 12, so they're all outdoorsy folks. I think all but one time they've ever had ticks, they were always behind the ears, just like without fail. It's insane. But you know who else we go outside with? Are our friends. So tick prevention in pets is just as important. Now, the nice thing with this, of course, is that we have the opportunity to prevent them with medicine that we haven't had and we don't have yet for humans. We're working on a Lyme vaccine that's actually in the later phases of being FDA approved. But we'll talk about that later. Make sure that your dog, is on some sort of FDA approved medication. Like NexGard is one of the preferred ones. Simparica Trio is another great one. There's not very many FDA approved ones. Ones that are not FDA approved are either usually not effective, like collars are basically kind of like a useless gimmick, to be honest with you. And like the little oil drops you put on, like Frontline, like those don't tend to work. Statistically, they kind of suck, actually. So you want to have something that when the tick gets on the dog and bites it, then there's something in the body of the animal, such as the dog, that then kills the tick, and the tick falls off, does not have the opportunity to give XYZ disease. There are vaccines you can give your dogs too, which is kind of cool. But there's a creepy place that no one would have ever thought to look for a tick on a dog, right? Just saying. So, yep. All right. So let's talk about tick repellents, right? So we have a bunch of different things here. Permethrin or permethrin, depending on how you pronounce it, is one of the most effective things, and it is good for clothing and gear, not for skin or tissue, right? So that's only for your clothing, your boots, your hat, whatever else. It works great for like no-see-ums and mosquitoes and stuff too, which was why I love it. Because like I said, I teach wilderness medicine, and I'm out there in the outdoors for large periods of time. And I used to just get eaten alive by the gnats and everything else. Now I'll spray my hats and my clothes with that. It stays on for like 5 to 7 washes, which is great. And it keeps everything away. And what it does is actually when a tick comes in contact with it, even after it's dry, it doesn't matter. It paralyzes the respiratory system and they fall off and die, which is quite cool. So definitely a big fan of that. Yes, it is true that it will kill cats, but that is only in liquid form, not once it has dried. And that comes from Sawyer, who is the manufacturer of that device. So again, so that takes care of option one. Option two is putting it on our bodies. Of course, DEET has always been kind of the go-to thing, right? So obviously the higher percent, there's that DEET 100% repel, which is like napalm for your skin. Apparently works really well. Obviously the higher content, also the longer it lasts, FYI, which is nice. But I definitely know that there's a lot of folks who that just they don't jive with putting chemicals on their skin, or they have sensitivities, which is absolutely fine. So our next backup would be picaridin, which is like a permethrin kind of substitute, but it's actually made for skin. And then there's something called IR3535, which is found in Skin So Soft, which is great because those are just as effective as DEET, in my opinion. And they're great for people with sensitive skin, great for kids. But again, that's for people and stuff, not for gear, not for clothing. So then, of course, you have the essential oils. I love we have the repel there with lemon eucalyptus. So that's great. That's fantastic. You smell fantastic. And that's where it ends. So they've done studies. Only a few actual things tend to deter ticks. It is true that some actually do. Lemon and eucalyptus do nothing against ticks, by the way. Tea tree oil is actually the best, according to science. The problem with essential oils is while they do work, they work for an extremely short amount of time. So we're talking 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes tops. So unless you're using essential oils over and over and over and reapplying constantly, and let's be real, who's actually doing that? Then I would say, let's cross that off. Let's just say, no, as much as I know there's a lot of people out there who are all about essential oils, they definitely have their place in society and in holistic medicine and such. Unfortunately, they don't really do diddly squat against ticks. So sorry to say. All right. Then, of course, you have other stuff like, for example, tick tubes, which has permethrin in it. And they focus the permethrin use on ticks who are feeding on mice, because mice are the very first food source for a lot of nymphal stage and larval stage ticks. And mice are a plethora of disease. They're just riddled with nastiness. Besides norovirus and everything else going around, they actually have more Lyme disease in mice than in deer. In fact, deer don't carry Lyme because deer have something in their blood that kills Lyme. Little known fact. So there's lots of different things we can do. Check out ticksafety.com/tubes for information on tick tubes. That's one of the most effective things. We have a Boy Scout camp. I'm a big Boy Scout guy. So we have a scout camp, a Cub Scout camp called Camp Tick-A-Lot. Actual name is Camp Snyder. It's in Haymarket. Maybe some of you have been there. And it's kind of fun because we called it Camp Tick-A-Lot because you go there and there would be ticks. I mean, by the droves. It was just bad. And the council would shell out literally hundreds of thousands of dollars for these various pest control companies come out and spray and eradicate the ticks, and it didn't even touch them. We did a tick drag, which is where you walk through an area of like grass or whatever, and you drag this piece of cloth essentially behind you, and you do it for either 10 feet or 100 feet, depending on which kind of study you're doing. We did a 10-foot study, right? And on that, I think we found close to like 900 ticks. I'm not even exact. It was ridiculous, right? And then they switched to a new company who then like, okay, well, let's not spray. We're going to use these tick tubes. And at that point, the council was like, do what you got to do. Don't care if it works. Great. And then we did a tick drag 6 months later, and I think we found like 13 or 14 ticks. Again, same time frame when they're most active and everything else. Just they make a world of difference. So, all right, tick tubes for the win. Yes, I agree. Okay. Oh, look, there it is. Maybe it helps if I should, look at the screen before I talk about things. Okay, so ticksafety.com/tubes. There you go. Information on that there. Okay. Whee! So ecology, I told you that it does matter, and that's because lo and behold, ticks live in different places depending on the species that they are. the more fragile ticks, for example, like deer ticks, are often found in the outskirts and the edges of woods because it's a lot more moist. You've got leaf litter and such. You've got lots of shade, and again, if it gets really hot or sun, then they dehydrate and die. So they know that the tall grass fields are not their place. Versus, and I hate to say it, the Lone Star tick, which has no problem being out there in the heat of the day. Like, yep, bring it on, sucker. And they're so much harder to kill, which really annoys me. And of course, piles of leaves and brush, again, good for woods, or good for deer tick, pardon me, also good for dog ticks as well. The typical life cycle of a tick, and by the way, we're talking primarily about what are called and birds and places of that nature. They're much more rare than these guys, like crazy rare. You can learn about those at ticksafety.com/soft, and there's a whole write up on those. But we're talking about the common ones, which are the hard ticks. So these guys, they start out as eggs, which you already saw pictures of that. Then they bust out into larvae. And what's cool is they have 6 legs like an insect until they have their first meal. And then they molt and turn into a nymph. And at that point, then, because they've had food, they have now the potential for XYZ disease. And on top of that, now they have the quintessential 8 legs, making them a true arachnid, just like their adults. So the more you know, right? Are deer the key? That is the question. Deer don't eat invasive plants. Why do you care? Well, because they help spread invasive plants, and invasive plants means there's more perches for animals to brush by and have a tick or two, so more opportunities, which means more disease. So deer are part of the problem in the fact that depending on what the ecology of the area is, well, they might help spread it. But at least the good news is, like I said, there's something in their blood which actually kills the Lyme spirochete in the bacteria, which is great. But what we really need to be focusing on, and I just talked about this, are those freaking, oh, so cute, white-footed mice. They are what are known as reservoir hosts, and they tend to have so many issues. Like I said, they are just a cesspool of crime, as I call. They're just so bad, and they breed all the time. And that is what we need to be focusing on, right? Which is why these tick tubes are so important. And just to give you a quick rundown on how these tick tubes work, because it's actually quite brilliant when you think about it. The tick tube itself is a reinforced cardboard with just like cotton swabs, right? That has been soaked in concentrated permethrin. And then, of course, it dries, right? And these mice are always on the lookout for things that are going to make their home cushy and soft and make it the best, most comfortable nest. And they absolutely go nuts for things that are soft and fluffy. So, cotton. So they bring this cotton back. It doesn't affect them in any way, shape, or form. And they rub all over it because it's, on the walls of their little lair, so to speak, their little den. And it gets all over their whole entire skin. It gets all over their fur. So they're just coated in the stuff. And as we know, because again, ticks' number one food choice when they're little tends to be 9 times out of 10 mice, sometimes a chipmunk, sometimes a rabbit. If we can kill the ticks, boom, right there from the get-go, and that's pretty rad. So, and yes, I completely agree. Let's hear it for the NPS Volunteer Weed Warriors. I am a huge fan, big proponent of that. So, how do ticks hunt? They don't hunt, but they do walk. They walk around and they wave their arms like, "Hey, what's up?" And again, that's called questing. And they use the little Haller's organ, which is a tiny little hole at the end of their front legs. They all have that. And that little Haller's organ detects primarily CO2, but also detects moisture, heat, and vibrations. Some studies actually think that it can also detect light, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. So again, believe it or not, we really don't know a ton about ticks. They're kind of new in the grand scheme of things, which is just weird. So, all right. Squirrels, yes, squirrels too. Chipmunks also carry. Oh yeah, absolutely, chipmunks do. Anything classified as a rodent, I would say. Yes. Great questions there, Lisa and Kathy and everybody. Good. All right, so let's talk about the illnesses that these oh so lovely ticks can give us, starting with the most common, or I should say it was the most common. We now think that maybe it might actually be this red meat allergy, but again, we'll get there. For a while there, the number one regime, of course, was Lyme disease, which is transmitted only by deer ticks. Don't let anyone else fool you. Like, oh, the other ones do. No, they don't. There's no definitive proof that mosquitoes do. We know that mosquitoes do spread malaria, and this is a very similar kind of issue. There are some speculations. I'm kind of leaning towards that, but we don't want to spread fear unless we have scientific proof. So we're going to put the kibosh on that for the time being. Signs and symptoms of Lyme disease, and again, there's acute and there's chronic, and we're not going to get into the medical side of things, although God knows I want to, because I'm a medical nerd. But I will say, think of just your classic cold, flu-like symptoms, right? Which is why this is so commonly misdiagnosed. You're not always going to get the erythema migrans bullseye rash, that's one of the best pictures of the quintessential rash there. Only 60 to 80% of the cases actually happen, which is, so obviously if you have that, you're like, yep, definitely have Lyme now. The problem is there's other illnesses that are similar that present also similarly, including a similar bullseye rash, but isn't Lyme and isn't fatal and does go away with medication. So the thing is, if we have the possibility of Lyme, and during COVID, this was just wreaking havoc, right? Because it's like, well, is it COVID? Is it Lyme? Nobody knows. The thought, of course, was let's test the humans for these wonderful Borrelia burgdorferi, which are, of course, those are the spirochetes right there. They're super, super tiny. And there's a lot of different ways we can do that. But the problem, of course, is how effective is that test? And the reason this is getting so important is because, and this data is just from Northern Virginia. Okay, so this is just our area here. In 2010, when we first started doing our tick drags, and this was a conglomerate. So this was Prince William County, Fairfax County, Loudoun County, Arlington, and Stafford. Okay, so we're like all over the place. We're taking various readings. In 2010, only 2 to 3% of deer ticks in the area had Lyme disease, which is fantastic. And then in 2014, we did another set, and it was 3 to 4%, so going up a little bit. Okay, are you ready for this? In 2017, in 3 years' time, depending on where you're at, between 14 and 38% in Northern Virginia. So it's getting bigger, right? Now, Northern Virginia especially, for example, Loudoun County actually has some of the highest Lyme disease rates. Fairfax is seeing similar things as well, but not compared to the entire state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania currently, and for the past 4 years now, has had the highest rate of Lyme disease in the entire country. Not even Connecticut, where it was first created. So, yay. So we need to be able to test for Lyme, and we can do a ELISA or Western blot test, which is, there's like a 78%, accuracy rate. So it's kind of like, is it right? Is it wrong? It only looks for the antibodies. So if you've ever had Lyme, guess what? You're going to test positive, and it takes a couple of weeks after you've been bitten for your body to create said antibodies. So then by that time, it's like too late, right? So they also started doing PCR DNA tests. Those are even less accurate, and they're known for producing false negatives. So that just sucks. So then, like, what are we supposed to do? And this is where some serious ingenuity came out, because a grad student from JMU created a nanotrap urine test. It's a 2-hour test. And to clarify, it takes 2 hours. You do not have to pee for 2 hours. That would be gross. And it has a 99 to 100% accuracy rate. It tests for the actual particles and proteins in pee for the Lyme disease. So if you had Lyme disease 10 years ago and you got over it, you're not going to test positive now unless you actually have an active case of Lyme disease, which is freaking amazing. So now the problem with this, and it's FDA approved and everything, the problem with this is not very many folks know about it, believe it or not. So you're going to have to go to your primary care physician and specifically request the Lyme disease nanotrap urine test, which they can Google because it has to be ordered by a physician. And most insurance won't cover it for some silly reason. It costs, I think, like $300 to $400, but it's worth it, in my opinion, right? So all these things, the news, I mean, we're getting better with technology, with medicine, everything else. Or option two, test the tick. Same accuracy rate, and it takes about a half hour, right? Now, it doesn't mean that, just because the tick tests positive for Lyme doesn't mean that you actually have Lyme, but there's enough data out there to suggest that, if a prophylactic dose of doxycycline or amoxicillin, if you're a child, for example, may be enough to put the kibosh on that and kill it, which is awesome. Now, it is currently 2026, is July. I do not believe there is a short supply of doxycycline any longer. At the time that we made this presentation, there was, but it kind of ebbs and flows. And there's some places, there's some doctors' offices that are just pill mills, and it drives me nuts. That are just like, oh, you were bitten by a tick. They won't even identify the tick. Like, oh, here you go. Well, guess what? If you're bitten by a Lone Star tick or a dog tick or a groundhog tick, for crying out loud, the doxycycline is not going to do anything for any illness that they give you, despite the fact that it is a broad spectrum antibiotic. And that's because of the way those illnesses work. They are only effectively treated after symptoms appear. So current CDC guidelines and ILADS, which is available at ticksafety.com/pro, P-R-O, as in prophylactic, right? You can see what's recommended there. The first thing is, as you're, I'm sure, guessing, is identify the tick, right? Because if it's not a deer tick, why even bother? And you can learn about the isms that go along with that. So anything other than doxycycline, a lot of folks are allergic to it. Amoxicillin is the second most common thing that we give, because those are both broad spectrum antibiotics. I have heard of several cases where, like a Z-Pak, which is not the common thing we give, is azithromycin, right? Because that's a broad spectrum antibiotic and it just destroys your gut biome, everything. I've heard that happens as well every once in a while. So I would say talk to your personal care physician. Obviously, they can recommend what's good for you. So here you go. There is the information on testing ticks. And we started doing this about 14 years ago now. I want to say 15 years ago now. And we don't do any advertising, by the way. And it's pretty cheap, as you can see, right? Insurance doesn't cover it, which, I mean, obviously. But I will say we were doing probably like 1 or 2 tests a week. And ever since COVID, I think we're up to probably 12 to 20 ticks a day that we're testing, which is absolutely nuts. It's an ELISA test that we do. It's a lot like your kind of thing. Again, 99 to almost 100% accuracy, which is pretty spectacular. And again, it just gives you something to say, hey, to your physician. Some physicians are like, yeah, I'm not going to give you medications. You can give them the paper that we're going to send you, and it says, hey, this tick tested positive. Would you mind giving me the 1 single dose as a preventative? And maybe that'll sway them. Who knows? So my point is, you have options. Check at your own time. Testatick.com or ticksafety.com/test, the same thing. So, all right. Does this service ID text as well? Yes, we do, in fact. And I'll tell you where to send pictures of that in just a minute. I did mention there was another illness that looks a lot like Lyme disease, which I like to call Lyme disease light, right? Which is SARI, which is the Southern Tick-Associated Rash Illness, which looks like, tastes like, feels like, but isn't Lyme, and is treated once and it goes away forever and life is good. Also transmitted by Lone Star ticks and not deer ticks. So there's a big difference there. But again, it's that COVID-like, flu-like symptoms, and a very similar, if you look at the bottom right rash, I mean, that's pretty bullseye-ish, right? So, pretty easy to kind of mistake those, I think. Like I said, there's a bunch of other diseases. Babesiosis, human anaplasmosis are very common co-infections. We don't test for anything except for Lyme disease. And the only reason is, again, Lyme disease is the only thing that is prophylactically effectively treated. And additionally, any other of the issues you're going to come across, whether it be babesiosis, anaplasmosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, whatever, they're all treated the exact same way with, you guessed it, the exact same medications, broad spectrum antibiotic, right? Here's a showing of where the spotted fever, it's a rickettsial disease that's spread by the American dog tick. Again, mostly Smoky Mountains, East Coast, almost none around the Rocky Mountains, which I don't know even why they got the name, whatever. But again, they're a lot like the whole, flu-like symptoms. Now, the difference, of course, you have a spotted rash, hence the name. But luckily, it's actually very rare, all things considered, which is great. So, all right, let's talk about the fun one. So, alpha-gal, which is better known as MMA in Europe, but of course, MMA means something different here. It's the mammalian meat allergy, right? Is a red meat and pork protein. Not a protein. It's actually a carbohydrate. So that needs to be changed. I'm not sure how that got in there. I'm sorry about that. It's a sugar, right? And not a protein. That's actually a very, very important distinction because your body can recognize and identify and tell your rest of your body systems whether it is okay with or it is not like a protein pretty quick. So like the proteins in eggs, for example, or the proteins that are in bee venom, for example, right? You just get stung, your body goes, nope, do not like, and then poof, anaphylaxis, you swell up like a balloon, you start having hives, you can't breathe, the whole nine, right? The problem with alpha-gal, because it's not a protein, it's actually a carbohydrate. That's carbohydrates take a while to process, right? So it's a delayed reaction. So you have the burger, right? And it turns out you're allergic. You're not going to have any issues for a couple of hours, most likely about 3 to 6 hours, maybe even longer, who knows? And then all of a sudden, like 4 hours later, you're drinking a milkshake, right? And you're like, boom, anaphylaxis. You're like, no, I'm allergic to milkshakes. That sucks. It was the freaking burger from 4 hours ago, but you never know, right? And so it's definitely a big problem. And unfortunately, because it's literally an allergy, there's nothing that can be done to prevent this. Like you can't just take some drug and it's going to make it go away. Like it isn't like doxycycline, because again, it's not a bacterial infection or anything else. It is an allergy. So you would have to treat the allergy as such with antihistamines. And of course, if you need epinephrine, an EpiPen or whatever else. Actually, there's a new Narcan version of epinephrine called Neffy, NEFFY.com. I literally bought some yesterday. It's actually going to be delivered to me on Friday. And I'm replacing the EpiPens I have in my wilderness first aid kit with Neffy because I don't have to worry about needles or anything else. And it's great. So check that out. Talk to me afterwards if you want to learn more about that. So, but again, it is everywhere. And it's not just the actual, not just the meat, right? All those carbs are also found in a lot of other things, including certain toothpastes, some dairy, like gelatin, it's nuts. So you mentioned we in testing. Who is we? We is Tick Safety, Center for Wilderness Safety. We do the testing ourselves. So we have a lab here in Sterling, Virginia. So, all right. Here is the occurrence of alpha-gal in case you're curious, right? It's you kind of have the Bible Belt area, kind of that area right there is kind of where it's all very much at. And now again, it's 2024. They think that this is now significantly higher. We're talking like Lyme disease or higher than Lyme disease rates as far as the number of people who actually have alpha-gal, which is insane. There is one promising thing about treatment-wise, which of all things is acupuncture. And I've heard that from numerous people, and they have pretty decent success rates with that, from what I understand. The problem with alpha-gal is there's no rhyme or reason to it. We think because there's no way of testing a tick for it. Trust me, if there was, I'd be a millionaire right now. Okay, we can't test for carbs. There isn't a test that doesn't exist. And so our best guess is that maybe 3 to 5% of Lone Star ticks in the U.S. have this alpha-gal that they transmit, but we don't know. We don't have a clue. And depending on your body and how you react to different things, you may have this alpha-gal disease, or I want to call it disease, the syndrome, if you will, for several years. You might have it. I have a friend who's had it for 30 years. I have another friend who she had it for 2 years and then it went away. So it completely varies. So, all right. Other tick-borne illnesses, pretty much all same, right? Just fever, headache, muscle ache, body, just that classic flu-like symptoms. They totally suck. And again, luckily, they are all treated the same way. Here is a list of some of the average transmission times as according to peer-reviewed data from what we've been able to tell. Again, there's lots of different things to choose from up here. So the number one thing you should be concerned with besides preventative, risk management of avoiding tick encounters to begin with, using repellents and, tape and everything else, of course, is if you have a tick attached, remove it first properly, might I add, and then identify it. And then once you identify it, put it in a Ziploc bag. The cool thing is, so as far as like our testing goes for Lyme disease, as long as the deer tick hasn't come in contact with bleach or hydrogen peroxide, we can test it. Even alcohol, which is kind of crazy. If it's dried up and in pieces, I had one from 7 years ago that a person forgot about and in their in a little Ziploc baggie and came across it and they're like, "Can we test this?" I'm like, "We can try," and it tested positive, which is nuts. So yeah. All right. So let's play another game, shall we? Myths or facts? Let's see if you actually learned anything or if you weren't paying attention. Let's see here. All right. Myth or fact? Suffocating a tick with petroleum jelly will make the tick drop off. You can put your answers. Oh, you guys are on it. No. Myth. Dun, dun, dun. You guys are all smart people. All right. Good job. Question number 2. No bullseye rash, no Lyme disease. Myth or fact? Yep. You guys are paying attention. I love this. This is great. So no bullseye rash equal no Lyme disease. That, unfortunately, is also a myth. Again, 60 to 80% of the cases you don't, you do have it, or maybe you might not see it because it's on your back or it's under your hairline or, so bummer. And we may just not get it at all, which kind of sucks. All right, moving on. Dogs, like humans, can contract, there we go, pronunciation, Lyme disease from a tick bite. Myth or fact? What are we thinking today? False. Oh, we have some, I don't know. Myth, true. Oh, yeah. That is a true fact. Yes, dogs can get Lyme disease, which is, again, why it's important to have them on something like NexGard or Simparica Trio or Simparica. That's how you say it, right? Or something of that nature. And again, there's a Lyme disease vaccine, which I did mention before. I want to mention it again. There is a Lyme disease vaccine for humans. It is currently in phase 2 or 3 of human clinical trials as per FDA. It was FDA fast-tracked last year. And they're saying, I think Pfizer owns it right now. And it's going to come out supposedly in 2027. And it has like a 60 to 70% prevention rate, which doesn't sound like a lot, but actually it's quite high in the grand scheme of things, which is pretty cool. I don't know if I'm going to get it or not. We'll see. We'll see what's up with that. All right. You can feel a tick bite you. Myth or fact? Now, I will say there are certain people who are just super duper sensitive and like they can feel something crawling on them. Like I've definitely had that experience, but on the whole, I agree. This is also a myth. And of course, myth or fact, ticks can transmit disease to people during any part of their 3 life stages. Tickle. Fact. Oh, we have less answers here. True, myth. We have quite the variety here. All right, so that one is in fact a myth. Because remember, the 3 stages are larvae, where they don't have anything yet, is the operative word. And then nymphs and adults, they absolutely can have the potential for an illness. So at least that one's off the hook. So, all right. Testing a tick for Lyme is faster and more accurate than testing a human on the whole. Yep. Everyone's chiming in there. Yep, you are absolutely correct. Fact, which is why it's a great thing. I'm glad we did that. We almost didn't do it. And then we actually had a whole lab set up in Chantilly, and then the guy who owned the facility passed away, and then COVID happened, and then we moved the lab into my basement. Not even a joke. It's like real. And my wife hates the fact that we have like Tick City down here, but it's something that we definitely take pride in, and it definitely is a necessary thing that we do. I want to point out, because several of you have asked this throughout the core or throughout the presentation, can you get ticks ID'd there as well? I don't know what there means. I'm assuming ticksafety.com. So yes, if you go to ticksafety.com/submit, there is a place where you can upload photos, your information, or that wonderful phone number on the bottom right of your screen, 703-828-4343, is our international tick hotline. And it's manned 24 hours a day. There are 7 of us volunteers, and we get people who send us tick pictures from literally all over. Last week alone, I had one from Pakistan and I had one from Spain, which is just absolutely nuts. I've had like super really weird tropical species. I mean, it's wicked, but it's all free, right? So everything is free. This is the whole entire point of ticksafety.com, is a free resource with accurate data, accurate information that we want to pass along to folks. The only thing that costs money, of course, being the Lyme disease test, which for obvious reasons. So did take her off. Oh, Patty, I love you. You're my girl. That's the dad jokes are strong with this one. It's good. I didn't even think about that one. That was well played. Well, folks, that is me. So thanks, JB. I appreciate you. Look at that. There you go. Not everyone has OCR. Yes, thank you for sharing that. That is lovely. If you guys have questions, now is a great time to put them in the chat there for us, and I'll do my very best to answer anything you have before we get going. And we're right about on time. Look at that. This is amazing. Terrific. Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate that, Robin and Laura and everyone else. Thank you. Wow, thank you. You were very good. How long can a tick survive in your house? Mano, that is a fantastic question. I'm so glad you asked that. So the most common tick that is found in a house is, of all things, the dog tick, oddly enough. And they are one of the only species who can live, you're not going to like the answer, for up to a year or 2 without feeding, so long as they are not dehydrated or not in a very, very dry environment. On the average, though, all other tick species, for the most part, are about 30 to 60 days tops. The best thing is when you come inside from a hike or whatever, right? Take all your clothes, your socks, even all the way down to your underwear and everything else. Throw everything. I know you're going to wash it. Before you wash it, here's what you do. You put all of your gear in the dryer, and you do a high heat dry for 10 or 15 minutes. That should kill like 99% of the ticks. And then you wash them, and then they fall out, and life is good. So FYI. All right, what else we got here? Just here. Gotta scroll through these things here. Excellent presentation. Yep, thanks so much. No, yeah, that's right. Will it kill ticks on your clothes if you put them in a hot dryer for 10 minutes? Yep, I just answered that. I didn't even look at that, but yep, that's right. Any specific things about ehrlichiosis? So ehrlichiosis it takes about 24 to 48 hours for the tick to feed on that, or on you, I should say, pardon me. And before it gives you that, which is oh so fun. By the way, all of these different diseases, if you go to ticksafety.com, we have a whole section on all of the various illnesses, pardon me, it's under diseases. Under common illnesses, you should find ehrlichiosis, for example, and other ones. But yeah, they are they're pretty similar. Ehrlichiosis is not as common by any stretch of the imagination as anything else. It's spread by the Lone Star tick. But again, it's flu-like symptoms, just like every other tick-borne illness. Sometimes there's a rash, more so in children, oddly enough, than adults. But again, treatment is the same regardless. It's doxycycline or some sort of broad spectrum antibiotic, which is crazy. Wife went through it; it was terrible. Yeah, I can imagine. Most tick illnesses are not fun. Let's put it that way. So, what temperatures do ticks become active? Let me answer that with a reverse answer. Is that at 34 degrees Fahrenheit is where they kind of become quote unquote dormant. The problem is they do have what we call it an antifreeze in their blood, or in their system that kind of prevents them from dying. And some are just more tolerant than others, and so they might actually be active. So anything I would say above freezing is kind of the general thing. And honestly, so long periods of very, very cold, I'm talking like below 10 or 15 degrees Fahrenheit, for several days, has the potential to wipe out a tick, but it takes a lot, unfortunately. So, is showering or bathing after hike effective as a preventative? Not so much, because you're done coming in from the hike, so that's more of a reactive thing. I will say it's definitely good. You should do it anyway because you're probably stinky. But definitely, it's a great opportunity to get down and do a really thorough tick check, or have your significant other do one for you. Yeah, does wearing gaiters help? Yes, and especially even more so if they're treated with permethrin. From personal experience, yes, absolutely. Anything else? Celestine, golden retriever. Can I lease my golden retriever for drag testing? Yes. See me afterwards. No, unfortunately not. But make sure your dog is on a preventative. We'll be good to go. So, all right,
Okay,
folks. I think that is it.
Cliff, I think we have everything from you that we can get. I
Fantastic.
do appreciate it. And I think I can speak for everyone that we're all so much more knowledgeable about all of this. We're better equipped to prevent tick and insect encounters. We know what to do if we're bitten by ticks.
That's the
And
goal.
we really appreciate your patience with our questions and your answers.
Oh, sure.
We're looking forward to hosting more of these collaborative webinars with you. And in fact, our next session will likely take place toward the end of this month, probably July 29th, focusing on the critical topic of heat-related injuries. And we will get to snake bites on that one too.
Yes.
We'll be sending
Super
out,
excited.
yeah, we're going to be sending out the registration details to everyone very soon. But once again,
Awesome.
thank you, Cliff, and thanks to all of our PATC members for attending today, and have a great rest of the evening. Thank you, Cliff.
My pleasure. Have a great one. Take care, y'all.
Bye-bye.